There were some highs, there were some lows, but if one word could sum up the last week for the Laval Rocket, exhausting. There's plenty to catch you up on today's Rocket Hockey Report. The Rocket putting in 5 games in 7 days last week. Yes, it was exhausting. Even for those of us in the media covering the team, it was a lot to pack into 1 week. So let's get right into your Rocket Rewind. Now, you'll remember when we met last week, we talked about the first 2 games of the week, which were 2 big wins in Manitoba. Something that they hadn't been able to win in quite a while. And so then the rest of the week comprised 3 more games, 2 at home and 1 more on the road to wrap up the week. And so they continued that win streak into their home game on Wednesday night against the Belleville Senators, winning that one 6-4. The amazing thing about this game was at one point, the Laval Rocket were down 4-0. Pretty early in the game. I mean, it looked like Belleville was going to just sweep the floor with them. And they came back, put up a ton of unanswered goals. Dobeš actually got pulled. Jakub Dobeš got pulled after the first period because of how just strongly Belleville came on in the first period. But that seemed to really wake up the bench. They got some things together, figured some things out, and they made a really big comeback in the end, putting up 6 unanswered goals. So they went from 4-0 to winning it 6-4. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible night for the fans at Place Bell. So that was 3 games in a row, a 3-game winning streak, which is, the back-to-back wins in Manitoba were the first time that the Laval Rocket had won back-to-back games all season. To stretch that to 3 games was a pretty significant thing. Could they sustain it on Friday night when the Lehigh Valley Phantoms came into town, the first time that they were meeting with the Atlantic Division opponent? Well, no, unfortunately, this turned into quite an ugly game, actually. And you could actually see that a little bit of that fatigue was likely starting to set in. This was now the 4th game played over the course of about 6 days. And the Rocket didn't look like they had as much energy as they even had on Wednesday night. The Phantoms controlled the puck for most of the game. They controlled the pace. They controlled the play. Things got very chippy in this one. Jakub Dobeš late in the game got a little bit of a hit behind the net when he was trying to play the puck. He went down. That caused a giant scrum. There were game misconducts. It was a mess. And when these two teams meet again, when the Laval Rocket travels to Allentown in December, I imagine it's going to be a pretty feisty rematch for them. So Laval going back into the losing column, breaking that 3-game win streak with a 3-2 loss against the Phantoms on Friday. And then if they weren't tired enough, they then got on a bus and drove to Utica, New York overnight so that they could take in a road game against the Comets on Saturday night. So this is that 5th game in 7 days. They're ending it with an overnight bus trip on the road. And this one didn't look great. Utica absolutely kind of dominated this game. And in fact, although the Rocket were able to put up 3 goals in this, they lost it 6-3. It really wasn't very indicative. It wasn't close. Let's just put it that way. They had some lucky bounces towards the end of the game when, again, there was some chippiness going on. They were on the power play, managed to convert some things because outside of that, Utica really dominated this game. And it was quite apparent that there was just nothing left in the tank for the Rocket at that point in the week. In terms of the roster, there wasn't a whole lot of juggling around that JF Uhl could do because Elias Anderson, who was injured in practice about a week and a half ago, still out, and it has now been announced by the team that he is going to likely miss about 6 to 8 weeks. That's a giant piece of their forward core that is going to be missing for almost 2 months now. Riley McKay was out day to day. Mitchell Stevens and Philippe Maillet also went down with injury during the week. They went out early in a game and did not return. So lots of injuries. So that, of course, meant some call-ups were needed to go to Utica on Saturday night. Nolan Yaremko and Alex Olivier Voyer were both recalled from Trois-Rivières in the ECHL. The other key piece of the puzzle is that now coming into this week, it looks like JFO will be without the services of one of his top defensemen, Jayden Struble, who was recalled by the Montreal Canadiens on Monday. Looks like Arbor Jacki is not going to travel with the team as they go on their California road swing this week. And so Jayden Struble gets to be the first defensive prospect recalled to Montreal. While that is great for Struble, and it's actually something I talked about, that I thought he would be the first D-man to get a recall from Laval on last week's Habs hockey report. It's also going to leave JFL's team at a bit of a disadvantage. He is one of the strongest pieces on the blue line that they've got, so it'll be interesting to see how they balance all that out. That leaves Laval currently sitting with a 5-9-1 record with a .367 win percentage. Yikes. It is just, they get a little bit of hope and then they come back to reality a bit. It's leaving them yet again 7th in the North Division. They are tied for last place. They're in 14th, but they're tied for last place in the Eastern Conference with the Bridgeport Islanders. In the league, they are tied with the Islanders for 26th overall if you're looking at points. If you're looking at win percentage, that actually drops them down to a tie for 29th place in the league. So still plenty of work to do for the Laval Rocket. Their special teams, power play's gotten a bit better. They're up to 20th in the league on the power play at 16%, 22nd overall for the penalty kill. So in fact, we saw a couple of shorthanded goals from the penalty kill over the weekend, which was kind of fun. Where they are leading in categories, they are leading the league in goals for. They have 55 goals for this season. However, they're also leading the league in goals against. They've scored 55 goals, but other teams have scored 66 goals on them. So kind of both extremes in terms of that statistic. Joshua Waugh, however, his stick has woken up again in the past week, and so that has put him back tied for first in the rookie points race with 18 points, and he leads all rookies in the league with assists with 11. So Joshua Waugh still continuing to impress. Looking forward to seeing how much more he can develop his game as the season goes on. He's getting a lot of great experience right now in the AHL. In terms of the prospect breakdown, I'm going to start with the bad because, we saw good and bad last week in terms of results. We saw good and bad in terms of performances. A lot of it towards the end of the week had to do with fatigue. No matter how well disciplined a team or individual players can be, playing 5 games in 7 days is a bit unrealistic. And so really, I only have one thing on my list of the bad for this week, and that was this schedule. I'm not sure. The week before that, which was essentially a bye week for Laval, they didn't play at all. That set them up for a 5-7, which was, in my opinion, and if you listen to Patrick Williams on last week's show when he was here as well, a little uncalled for, really, and unheard of in the American Hockey League and in pro hockey in general. I'm not sure what the reasoning or thinking was behind the scheduling with this kind of setup for Laval for this past week, but it certainly didn't do them any favors, and I think it put them at a real disadvantage towards the end of the week. 5-7, 2 of those games were a flight out to Manitoba and back on a back-to-back. One of those games was an 11:30 start time in the morning on the second part of that back-to-back. Come home for 2 days, then get on a bus and travel overnight for the last game in the 5-7 stretch. Just a bit unreasonable, if you ask me. So that's my bad for this week. In terms of the good, sure, there were 2 losses out of the 5 games played, but Jakub Dobeš, I'm ignoring the fact that he got pulled in that Belleville game because really it looked like Laval wasn't ready to start that game, and Belleville took full advantage of it. And I think this was more of a move to spark the bench and, okay, let's try something new for him to get pulled. His attitude this past week has really been incredible. My colleague here at Rocket Sports, Chris G, actually spoke to Jakub Dobes during the week and spoke to him about how he's handling all of the adversity, handling the wins, the losses, the getting pulled, things like that. And he's just really hungry to learn. He says, I love a challenge. He said something to the effect of, I'd rather have 5 breakaways happen on me and 2 or 3 of those go in, rather than I make 10 easier saves of shots, in traffic or from the perimeter, because those 10 easier saves, I'm not learning anything. But those 2 or 3 goals that get in on a tough breakaway one-on-one, I can learn and grow from that. I thought that was a very mature answer. He also said, I'm having a great time because I love the challenge. For the last couple of years in the leagues that I've played in, I've dominated. And so there hasn't really been much of a challenge for me to grow and learn and get better. And so I'm having a blast because this is a challenge for me, and that's what I want because I want to eventually make it to the NHL. Just a really mature outlook from Jakub Dobes. I think he's with that kind of attitude and that kind of work ethic. I think he's gonna grow into something pretty special for the goaltending depth in the Canadiens organization. I also say Jayden Struble, of course, had a great week. He had a very, remember, he was suspended for 3 games, so he did not play in the second Manitoba game nor the 2 home games. He came back from his suspension on Saturday night in Utica, and he really picked up where he left off. He was, very active in both zones. It probably helped that he was the most rested of anybody on the team since he didn't have to play for 3 games. But certainly his play absolutely this week and this season so far earned him that recall to Montreal. Really happy to see that and can't wait to see what he does if he gets into a game in the NHL. And finally, Riley Kidney. You remember last week I said that Riley Kidney was on my bad list. Not that he's played poorly, but just that he's not done much. He only had 1 assist on the season so far. Well, he scored a goal over the weekend. In fact, that was his first pro goal. And so that actually makes Riley Kidney my standout star for this week. Did he do anything tremendously amazing consistently all week long? No, that's not why I'm picking him as my standout star. But potting that first pro goal, and he did it at the end of the week, which I've said was a grueling and brutal schedule for the Laval Rocket, and he dug deep and he was able to make an impact and get on the score sheet when the Laval Rocket really needed it. And so really pleased, and hopefully that helps to spark something for Riley Kidney. So on the Laval look ahead, what's in store for the Rocket this week? Well, they had a little bit of rest, of course, when they got back from Utica. Well-deserved, well-needed. And then a little bit of practice before they hit the road this week. They're on the road for the entire week this week. They've got 3 games on the calendar, starting with 2 games, Wednesday night and Friday night in Rochester against the Amerks. Yes, the Americans again. They've played them an awful lot very early in the season. And then they'll finish out the road trip on Saturday night in Syracuse against Joel Bouchard's team, where you'll remember the last time they played the Crunch, it was in Syracuse, and they lost that one 5-0. So we'll see. This will be a bit of a redemption game to see if they have an answer for Bouchard's team this time around. Hopefully things don't go like they did the last time these 2 teams have met. And as terms of Rochester, remember, this is always kind of a tale of 2 teams. Which Rochester team is going to show up. However, they have been having some success recently. In fact, they are 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. They've gone on a pretty decent run. And Rochester and Syracuse are both in a 3-way tie with the Toronto Marlies for second place in the North Division. In fact, they were in a 3-way tie for first place until the Cleveland Monsters just won their game on Monday, which put the Monsters just 1 win ahead of Rochester, Syracuse, and in Toronto. So this isn't going to be an easy test for Laval this week, but hopefully after some rest and some practice, they'll be feeling fresh and ready to take on the challenge. Don't forget, if you're enjoying this content and you haven't done so, just tap that subscribe button down below. Also hit the notification bell and the like button. And as I mentioned, I had said last week on Habs Hockey Report, I predicted that Jayden Struble would be the first recall for the Montreal Canadiens in terms of a defensive prospect, and that's exactly what happened. So if you'd like to hear more of my analysis on why I believed Struble would be the guy that gets the call, then you'll want to check out this video right here and meet me back again next week. Thanks for watching.